All right, so we've got the side marker cut in, so that's the last of what I have to do to this fender before I take it back off the car and hem that back section over there. And there's some things I can't reach right now that have to be welded up, so that'll have to come off, and I'll have to do all that. Something that I added just as a mock-up is this chin spoiler, and it's a little reminiscent of the version that they used to use back when the 71, 72 Plymouth ran in NASCAR. I had mocked up a chin spoiler that went all the way across the front and wrapped around the sides, but it seemed to be just a bit too much, and it took a lot away from the character of the front end of this car, especially the part that rolls under. It kind of blanked that all out, and kind of it made it look very blunt. So I trimmed it back to basically what I have here, and I think that's what I'm going to end up going with. And there's a reason for this. It's not just ornamental. The reason for this piece is unlike the Dodge Challenger, which has a bumper that protrudes starting at the headlights, and it comes out further and it's down lower, much squarer. This bumper is up high and it rolls away, and in doing so, at the bottom it exposes the bottom of the radiator, and more importantly the air conditioner condensers right straight up front there, and about 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches below the steel for the roll pan. With that in mind, I had to afford it some sort of protection, and this small chin spoiler pretty much accomplishes that, and it doesn't look bad while it's doing that. So the chin spoiler is not just ornamental. It'll be made out of something that will be a little weaker than the bumper should you hit anything like a curb or anything, but it gives a little bit of protection from road debris hitting the bottom of the radiator. I'll actually have another additional screen behind this, but this will cover the visual of seeing the bottom of the condenser and the radiator, and also the radiator core support, lower core support, is exposed. So that's what I'm up to now, and we'll just move on from here. Okay, so now I'm working on the lower grille opening here, and also the driving lights, which are here and going to be here. It's a real tight quarters in there, and so I'm still developing the housing for, this is the driving light. They're pretty universal, not that expensive. I think they're like $12 with everything. It's got an adjustable screw. It goes in either this way or this way, depending on what you got going on. And this screw tilts the bulb up or down depending on how you want it to play out on the road. So that's the whole fixture with the bulb and everything. The bulb twists out and so forth there. Anyway, so what to do is I've got what I have to do is I've got a roll pan that rolls under. So I have a bulb and housing that I want to play out perpendicular to the road for the most part, so I can use this tilt up and down. And what I've come up with on the Daytona that works pretty good to house these is just a 4-inch inside diameter PVC pipe. So this one, you can see I've got it cut on an angle. This is going to fit on the inside of the roll pan where I've got that hole cut out. So the hole is represented by the 4-inch diameter. And the way I came about having that hole is I took a piece of scrap material and I put it on one of my body stands, and I put it on there level and just ran it into the roll pan, and just traced the inside. So it's the opposite of what I'm doing now, which is to cut it to the shape to fit on the inside. Well, the hole's cut to this size already, so it's pretty easy to just line this up and then sand it off a little bit here and there until it fits snugly on the back side. Had to do a little bit of clearance here for a piece of the bumper bar that I didn't anticipate being in the way, and you run into that kind of thing when you're flying by the seat of your pants, so to speak. Anyway, you'll see that this fits in here. I've got a notch on the bottom, and you can see it slides in pretty nicely. So that's the housing, and this will be fastened either by rivets or countersunk screws through the face of the steel, and then I'll epoxy it also to hold it in. But the bulb and everything sticks out the back, and the way it's meant to, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a couple of pins that normally would fit through a molded housing. So I'm going to have to put it back, which I'll use a piece of 1/8" Lexan, and I'll drill some holes so that this thing always goes in and aligns with those pins. But also, there are some little clips on here, which when they're set ideally, I don't know if we can get this in here close enough so you just see this, but you can see these little clips here. They pull back. So I'll have to cut little holes in the backer so that this goes through and snaps into place, and that'll retain it. So that's going to be my housing, and it's a piece of hardware you can pick up at the Home Depot, and it just happens to fit these housings pretty nicely. And they're the ones that are on the Dodge Chargers and the Challengers, these housings, the road lights. Anyway, this might not be the final iteration. I have a little trimming to do here and there to make sure this all fits up nicely. And then I'll have to come up with a rim to cover this little adjuster screw, kind of a decorative bezel on the outside, because one of these is going to have to point down and the other one's going to have to point up, because like I said, these are universal, and the bulb faces in one direction. Now that's fine on one side because it faces inwards, so you can get the harness in and snap it in this way. But on the other side, it runs right into the bumper supports. So I'm going to have to flip the bulb and the housing over and have the adjustment screw on the top side. So just a lot of little stuff to consider. All right, so here's a trick that's been used for years by guys who cut roll bar tubing. You know, once you, if you're hand building, say, a roll cage or something like that, and you have a number of fish mouths that you need to cut to fit over, you know, one pipe coming into another, and you know, you have multiples, and you don't want to sit there and fiddle with each one if you're figuring it out by hand, waste a bunch of tubing and a bunch of time. So once, you know, you go through the process of fitting up one piece, you take and you just wrap. So here's a piece of pattern paper, and it's just wrapped around and it's taped, and then I just cut it off on the edge of this housing. And this is the housing for the, obviously the other side is what I want to duplicate. So in order to transfer, this has got a little bit of a curve in this direction to follow the roll pan, and I want to match this one because this one fits really good. So rather than fumbling around and trying to hand fit the other one, like I did this one, you just go ahead and make this paper pattern. It's just taped, and you have a couple of marks where it goes, and this is your pattern, and you just wrap this over your other piece of tubing and mark it out and cut it. And it's just an old trick, and everything's laser cut and computer cut these days, and it's all perfect and everything. But in the old days, that's how, or at least some guys who still do things by hand, this is the way that they accomplished if they had a multiple cut for a bunch of roll bar tubing that had to be fit up. So what I've done here is I've got the housing for the road lights. I've got a little clamp so I could stand it up and work on the back side evenly. And what I've done is I've made a pattern for how my backer plate is going to be made out of Lexan. And you can see anytime something's complex like this and a little bit overwhelming, the best way to approach it is just take little bits and pieces of paper and just kind of tape them around, and then take that whole thing and transfer it to a solid piece of material. But you can see these are the alignment pins coming up through here, and then there's these little retainer clips that you can push back right here. I'll show you. This one looks a little bit, you can see it. So you have to allow a little bit of space on the back side here for this to be able to be released. Not that you're going to use it every day, but if you need to change the housing out, you got to have some way of releasing it from the backer. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you that that's my approach to just like when I was doing the wheelhouses. It's a very complicated shape, which this is. It had a lot of interesting stuff going on back here that I had to cut around, that you would, normally have to avoid interference when you want to pull this thing straight out the front. And this is the way I went about it. Okay, so here it is with the Lexan piece on the back that was cut from the pattern. And one of the advantages of the Lexan piece is the fact that you can see through it. Once you've got these holes roughly drilled out, you can set the piece on, and then you can widen them just because you're able to view these pins or these tabs through the Lexan. The other advantage of using Lexan is it's instead of, say, like a plastic or a plexiglass, the Lexan's it's rigid, but it has a rubbery quality to it, so it's not going to be as brittle as, say, like a plexiglass or something like that. Plexiglass has a tendency to split and crack when you rivet it, especially with very little distance to the edge right here. Now these are aluminum rivets, dome head rivets, and the reason I used aluminum, it was the fact that a steel rivet has a lot more strength and would probably split the side of this PVC pipe. Whereas the aluminum gives a little bit more. All the materials being soft is an advantage. The pipe is soft, the Lexan is soft, the aluminum rivet is soft, so it's a win-win-win all the way around for that stuff. But also, one thing I forgot to mention, I noticed when I was doing this, is the fact that this is an old piece of PVC pipe. I don't know how old it is. I got out of a house I was renovating. And you'll notice that it's PVC all the way through. And I noticed some of the newer drain pipe you see in the home centers is just a veneer on either side, and then it's filled with like a foam core. So the pipe's a lot lighter, and they use less PVC. So how I have this fastened on the edge here, that might not be possible if you decided to use a PVC pipe that's currently available. But anyway, there's other ways of doing it. You can epoxy it down and things like that. But that's essentially the process I went through to put the backing on the housing, and it's spaced out where everything clears underneath the bumper of the car. I had to push this out a little further than I wanted to. Let me show you that and get this thing released, but I don't need this anymore. But you can see this is beyond where the roll pan is, and I'll have to make something in this direction decoratively to cover this area here. Probably just like a lower face. You see that on a lot of the 68 Dodge Chargers and 70 Dodge Chargers. They had, at the bottom of the roll pan, they had a little bit of a bulge that came out to cover the road light, get the road light a little bit out of the roll pan itself. So I'll have to do something like that for this, and the reason is this was bottoming out on the bumper structure, so I had to get it out far enough that I could still plug it in. I cut away some of my bumper structure on the passenger side of the car so that I could install both of these lights with this oriented towards the bottom. So this points in the same direction in the car. So that would have been a problem plugging this in, so I had to cut out some of the... It was nothing critical. It was just a couple of places that I had gusseted the bumper structure, and it's just this just tucks underneath there right now. So that's that. Next we'll install them similar to the way I installed here, but with countersunk rivets through the face of this thing, and then some epoxy to hold it on also, which I'll have to do once I take the roll pan back off the car to finish it out, because right now I can't get in the back side there. It's all closed up. One thing I did want to show you also is how I ran this through the bandsaw. what I did was I found the center of this pipe, the top side, and I drew a line along the top side of that the pipe. Basically, this is 4 3/8 from outside to outside. So I made a mark on a board that was 2 3/16. So I was able to screw into that center line, and this stabilizes this pipe. This could be a small piece like this. Could be pretty dangerous running it through a bandsaw. So you want to keep your hands way clear, and also you want to have the material secured, because round stuff, when you're cutting it, has a tendency to rotate when the blade grabs it, and it'll rotate it around, and it'll mess your cut up, mess your piece up, and worse, sometimes it'll draw your hand into the saw, which is not really good stuff. So what this does is create, it's very stable. It's on like a flat surface now, because this is resting firmly on here, and it's resting firmly on this board. So I was able to guide this through, and it maintains that angle, so that I'm not rocking the pipe this way or that way, or trying to hand jigsaw it. You would have a tendency to follow and maybe rock in and out. Then you have to sand it off, and of course it might mess up your profile when you go to sand too much off in order to correct it, and then you can overcorrect. But anyway, this helps hold it. You can hold it when you push it through the saw. You can hold it way over here, with this hand here, and very quick, very easily guide it through, follow your line, and get your profile evenly on both sides of this piece, so it's straight across. I just thought I'd show you that. That's how I handle that. It's just a couple of drywall screws. Pre-drilled these 2 holes, started these holes so that I had some good material to bite in, and then ran them through. It's nice and tight. Just a quick trick that helps you to stabilize a round piece of this. In this case, it's plastic, which so it's not that bad of a deal. But a similar technique can be used for steel. You could tack a piece of steel onto the vertical face so that it rides on the bed. If you had to run it through a steel bandsaw and get some sort of a curved cut in the pipe, and you wanted it to be perpendicular and get a nice cut. All right, so here's the housing pop riveted into the back side of the roll pan, and one thing I didn't anticipate was, I'm drilling holes into the edge of this. It's only a 1/4 inch rim, and the only places where it's really good to drill straight in is like right here, and then down lower, just above. I had some holes prepared to drill here, but obviously you could see that on that angle, the rivet's just going to go straight through and into the inside of the housing. So it's a little bit of a difficult situation there, but I've got enough rivets in there. I've got about 6 rivets in there, and that should be enough. And I'll epoxy it once I get everything taken off. Excuse me. Anyway, this is where this will fit in here. It takes a little bit of jostling to get it in there, but that goes back, and I'm not going to snap it in right now because I have to do some more work to it. But so that's pretty much how that'll sit in there, and then I'll push it all the way back, and those clips will engage. Like I said, I'm going to have to do something to cover this lower piece over here, because this housing sticks out just a little bit further than the roll pan at the bottom. So I'll have to do something, a little decorative rim to apply to the bottom there and make it look like a better transition, or look like it's a little bit better planned out than I did. Anyway, so that's how that all worked out together. Well, I'm starting the process of making that decorative ring. First thing I'm going to do is made this rough housing to create a vertical surface in this direction and a level surface in this direction around the light fixture itself. Now I'm going to go close to the bulb, but I'm going to trace around in there and minimize this. This should only end up sticking out probably maybe 3/4 inch at the very, very bottom, and it'll taper to nothing as it comes up the side. But it's a pretty exaggerated look at what it's going to somewhat look like, or at least the beginnings of it. Okay, so I've trimmed this down now to It's about 3/4 of an inch at the bottom, and then it tapers to nothing on either side. Now I've got to make a small vertical, maybe 1/4 inch facing here that'll create like a little down face, and then I'll go with a conical shape underneath to meet this bottom area over here and taper back in over here. I need the flat face in order to have a small tab on either side to be able to fasten these, because these are going to have to be removable in order to get to that adjustment screw at the bottom of this light fixture here. With the piece off the car, I'm adding the vertical face of it, and what I did was I used an oversized piece so that it would hold the shape as I welded it. If I just cut a 1/4 inch strip, by the time I got done welding it, it would have been a mess. So while it's still attached to a larger piece of metal, I made the 1/4 inch face, which you can see at the top I have the little tabs, which I'll clean those up and drill those out, and that'll be an attachment point, and there'll also be a lower attachment point, but I have the metal there that I can use as an attachment point now at the top. But I'll trim that out and start working on making the final piece, which will be the conical shape to the bottom. Okay, real quick, here it is with the vertical face welded up and trimmed out, and the 2 attachment points. I've got them just clecoed up right now so I can develop the lower piece here. But you can see this is following the shape of this on the inside. Now this flat face, I'll probably round it up a little bit because it's a little bit abrupt. But that's what it looks like, the vertical face attached, and attached to the car temporarily. Okay, so this is what the piece looks like off the car. You see I developed this lower conical shape to fit up underneath, going to the back and to the roll pan, I should say, the lower roll pan. And this is that flat section, and here's your 2 tabs to secure it to the car. Yeah, so it doesn't look like 4 hours worth of work, but yeah, that's about what it took. I'm going to have to take patterns off of this one now and repeat the same process on the other side. Definitely be just a little bit different because everything, the hand roll that I put into the roll pan is probably just a little bit different on that side. So it won't be perfect, the patterns, but it'll get me close enough that I probably won't have to spend as much time as it did on this one to get this one here to develop all the patterns that I needed and to complete it. Finally, here it is back up on the car. I have 2 stainless steel screws holding it through those 2 flanges. And that's it. That makes that particular housing complete. A little fluff and buff around the edges of the thing, as would be usual. But for the most part, that's done. Okay, so here it is with the housings both in. And I added a little bit of black on the inside of the rims because I'll eventually be painting that, but it was kind of hard to see with the different layers of the plastic insert and then the steel on the outside. I just wanted to see, you know, what the quality of these things are going to look like when they're painted out. So the only thing left to do, and I'm debating whether or not to do it, is to make that center grille a little bit more interesting. Got looking at the original rendering, and there's it's broken up into 3 sections, and I don't know if it's going to get too busy, whether it'll take away from the overall look or what at this point. But I'm going to play around with that lower grille opening for a little bit and see what it looks like as per the rendering. And then we'll move on to the next step, which is probably going to be a bunch of boring stuff like the inner wheel tubs and jazz like that before I get it back into doing some stuff like the back deck or the hood. Anyway, that's where we're at right now, and I'm pretty happy with the way they came out, and we'll go on from here.